Hello, this is Christopher Kennedy and welcome to the Compositing Masterclass, where we're using After Effects to create visual effects. So the easiest shot in the world is to take something like this, just a plain simple background, and make it look like this. So we have smoke on the far right there and the figure walks across the frame. If you've used After Effects at all, I hardly need to show you how to do that. You would simply place your smoke element into the scene, bit of color correction, and you're done. But it's worth showing you a little more of this music video that I created some years ago, because there are more complex visual effects such as these here where there are explosions in the background. There you go, behind that mound of earth but in front of the power station. There they're rising up in the background. And here, this is the sort of shot that people think we spent a fortune on. And then there are more subtle shots like this where there's just smoke in the foreground. And again here, smoke rising up behind a building. And it's worth having a look at that music video. It's called Dreaming Light by Anathema. It cost just $400 to make. And when people look at it, they think we had tens of thousands. And that's all down to the power of After Effects. This power station clip has been used in several of my tutorials to show you just how versatile After Effects is. This is a good way to get to grips with the basic idea of tracking and placing an element into your scene. This is the basis for all compositing work. Go to Window, Tracker to bring up the tracker tools. Just expand those down here. And then over here we click Track Motion. And we're going to need position and rotation, because if you look, that clip does have some rotation in it. So we check the rotation box down here, and that gives us 2 track points. Now just zoom in, and remember, whenever you're moving these track points, you want to click inside this center box, but try not to get this crosshair in the middle. When you're over the crosshair, your arrow goes white, and if you do that, all you do is move the crosshair. You don't want to do that, so click inside the smaller box and move the box to a point of high contrast. I think I'll try just the edge of that black dot there. And the second point, which is going to measure rotation, should go to another point over at the side. Let's pick that one there. Now when you try to track, if it doesn't work, you can just pick new points. First of all though, let's create layer new null object, and that will become the target down here. Click edit target, pick null 1, and that's where our tracking will be applied. So now we click Analyze Forward and just watch how well that track works. You can see visually that those track points do stay in place. If they'd suddenly zoomed off to the side, then you could go back in and expand this box or expand this box to try and get a better tracking point. However, we've got a good track there, so we just click Apply, and that applies to our null. And if you watch this red box now, you can see that follows the motion of our clip. We can now add footage to this and composite it in with different blending modes. So here we have a smoke element which we can add, and this hasn't been pre-keyed, and by that I mean it doesn't have an alpha channel. Sometimes you can buy footage or create footage and it has an alpha channel built in, and then compositing is as simple as dropping it into place. In this case, we'll drop it into the timeline, and then we're going to need to change its blending mode and move it around a little. First of all, I'll right click, choose blending mode, multiply, and now you can see that smoke in place. Now it's not tracked in yet because we've not attached it to the null. So to do that, I grab the smoke layers parenting lasso here and just drag that line out to the null over here. And now you can see that smoke has the correct rotation and movement. Now you need to make it look good, and that's the real secret of compositing. So we can now position this where we want in the frame, and it'll still be attached to that null. So you can see there I've put it too far over to the right, so we'll just move it back like this. That looks pretty good there. And then once it's in place and you're happy with it, you need to mask out the foreground. So click on the pen tool, make sure the smoke layer is selected, and then click around the edges of the power station like that. I find it easy to click around the object that I'm trying to get rid of, then hit M and check the inverted box. Now when we play through, the smoke appears to be rising up behind the building. You can see there the mask isn't working further into the shot, so I'm just going to reposition this marker over here and down here. We want that smoke to show up behind the building. Okay, let's see if that stays accurate from the beginning. Because of the way that this has been tracked, we're actually going to need to animate the mask. So I'll go to the end of the clip here, click on the mask, and just make sure it's exactly how I want it. I'll hit F and drag up these numbers here just to feather that slightly. Just the smallest amount of feather. We don't really want it to be too feathered. And there, that looks pretty good there. Now hit M again, keyframe the mask path here, then I'll go right back to the beginning of the clip and correct it here and just see if that automates the whole process. So I'll just click on that mask point, move it up, and on this one over here. With that tracked and masked into place, I want to play with the blending modes to see what works best. Because at the moment, the smoke is mixing with this wire here, and it really just looks as though it's in front of the wire rather than behind it. So you can either right click, choose blending mode and keep trying out different modes, or the best way to cycle through them is to hit shift and plus and just keep doing that, testing out the different blending modes till you find one that works. And then when you're happy with it, just right click on it so you can see which it is. It's selected there with a little dot, so we've chosen darken there. And that works quite well because it appears to be behind the wire and yet in front of the sky. But I'm going to want to bring its opacity down. So I'll hit T, drag the opacity down, and that's looking much better already. So the idea is that the smoke should look as though it's there. The viewer shouldn't think this is a visual effect. They should hopefully think that the smoke was actually there. A good way to do this is to duplicate the layer and then just drag it in the timeline to the left so you have a different version playing at that point. And now we've got two lots of smoke rising in the same place. You might need to adjust the mask to accommodate for the fact that you've moved that up, but you can see how that just thickens the smoke and makes it look more realistic. There's still more we can do to this, and in the next lesson I'll show you some ways that we can really improve this and help sell the shot, as well as working with blending modes in a bit more detail.